Well, good evening and welcome to our audience this evening. We're so glad that you've taken the time to join us here for the ASI Hour this Thursday evening. We'd like to just introduce our speaker here in just a moment. We have a couple of things that we'd like to just encourage you to consider as we go through our time together this evening. Some of you have already noticed and have perhaps are familiar with the chat that's on the right-hand side of your screen. And we also have opportunity as we go throughout our time together this evening for polls that just allow each of us to participate and share answers that will be helpful in what Gary will share with you this evening. So I'm Curtis Sletniak, and Gary Rayner is joining us here. And welcome, Gary. We're so glad that you're willing to share with us this evening. I would also just like to let you know that there will be an opportunity as Gary goes through his presentation for you to type questions into the chat here. And those questions, we've reserved time at the end of our presentation for you to answer those questions, or for Gary to answer those questions. And we look forward to this interactive time of sharing. I see that we have a number of people joining us from all over the world, and we'll start off actually with a poll, just kind of getting an idea of the time zone that you're joining us from. So just this will be a opportunity for you to try out the poll section that we'll be using throughout our presentation. So you'll see a poll at this point. If you could just answer, what time zone are you joining us from this evening? And we have typically had the Eastern time zone dominating, but I see Pacific is leading up a strong second here, and Mountain continues to lag behind. And I would just encourage people in the Mountain time zone to invite someone who you know to join us next week for the ASI Hour. We really want to see the Mountain time zone gain here in our attendance. So welcome to each one. I see we have people joining us from Bahamas, from Australia. Wow, welcome. Julian, thank you for joining us from India. We have, I think, Trinidad, number from the Bahamas, of course, Tennessee. Welcome to each one, wherever you're joining us from this evening. Let's, before I introduce Gary, I'm just going to ask that we bow our heads for a moment of prayer here, and I'll introduce Gary, and then we'll take it away. Heavenly Father, we're just so grateful for the opportunity we have to spend this hour together each week on the ASI Hour. This evening, Lord, we have a very special opportunity that Gary has taken to share with us what you've done in his life, how you've built this in his life, the different experiences that you've given him. And I pray that our time together would not only be an inspiration, Lord, but a challenge to us as we consider the call to action that you've given to each of us, Lord, and how you've done that in Gary's life and how he's responded, and how you've blessed in that. And so I just pray that our time together this evening would be attended by your Holy Spirit in a rich way. And we just pray that you'd be with us now in your name. Amen.
Amen.
So Gary is joining us as a very rich background and experience in entrepreneurial area. And so Gary, I'm going to let you explain a little bit more in detail, as there's a lot here. So just go ahead and share with us the background you're coming from.
Absolutely. Well, in case you didn't catch it, I've got a bit of an accent. I like to tell people it's a Southern accent, but really I'm from the deep South, which is Australia. And I came to the United States as an immigrant, as a dreamer, I guess you'd say, at the age of 20 years old, really with nothing in my pocket, and have been blessed with the, I guess you would say, with a mixture of successes and learning experiences. I like to say that I've founded some nonprofits as well, but that wasn't necessarily intentional. But fortunately, I've been blessed with some great successes too. So hopefully you'll find it inspiring, interesting, helpful in some manner as I share my journey, something that you can apply to your life as well. So maybe I'll start with a little bit of background, not so much to cite, but to give you a bit of an idea of my experience. So I've built 8 tech startups over the last, I guess you'd say, 30 years. And 3 of them have been real blockbusters. One of them has been a multi-billion-dollar company. And I've had 2 other companies that have been in the multi-hundred-million-dollar companies. One of the brands you may be familiar with is a brand of protective cases for your smartphone called LifeProof. Another company was called Lytix, with a product called DriveCam, which was all about driver safety, using driver feedback, artificial intelligence, all sorts of things to be able to reduce traffic accidents, and Interpreter, which is clinical and genomic analytics. So the other 5 companies were, in various degrees, either somewhat successful or, as I said, learning experiences. I guess you have to be thankful for those because they make you thankful for what you have, and there's nothing like pain as a good teacher. I have about 30 awards, patents that have been awarded. Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2012, UCSD Connect, Most Innovative Products Awards. There's a whole bunch of different awards that I've won there. You can see it on the screen. Again, it didn't start out for me as, I would say, highly privileged or gifted. My father was a banana farmer, and I grew up in a small country town of around 2,000 people. So for somebody that made my life in technology, it's kind of unusual to come from that background. Definitely, I would not say that I've had privilege. I wouldn't say that I've had white privilege or any other sort of privilege. I would say the privilege that I have had is good Christian parents that gave me a great example of hard work and of integrity and of good principles. I've had the privilege of growing up in an Adventist school system and having, great education and moral values. And I've had the privilege of mentors and people that have come alongside me and encouraged me at various times along the way. So, my success is pretty much back-ended. So, here's a few more photographs here of some interesting experiences that I've had around the world, meeting various leaders and going interesting places. Some of my inspiration as a kid really was the space program. So I'm a product of the 1970s. In a certain way, I guess you could say I've come around full circle because with coronavirus, I haven't had a haircut for the last 9 months. So, I'm back to the 1970s haircut again. But I was amazed as a 2-year-old at the fact that we put a man on the moon with the rockets. And I tried building rockets when I was 2 years old. Fortunately, nobody introduced me to gunpowder or explosives at that age. So they didn't go very far. But that really ignited in me a passion for technology and what was possible if you just dream big enough, if you try audacious, ambitious goals. And really by the age of 4, I was reading about the inventors, the major innovators, Nikola Tesla, obviously Louis Pasteur, Marie Curie, many of the other big names in science that have changed the world in dramatic ways as we know it. And I knew I wanted to be an inventor and an innovator. So from that age on, I was basically building, tinkering, tearing anything apart I possibly could to learn about how it worked. And I decided, and I knew without any question, that my calling was to be an innovator and an inventor. I don't know if you've seen the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but that kind of summed up my life. So when you grow up in a small country town where your father is a banana farmer and expects you to follow in his footsteps and wants to teach you how to work manually on the farm, it was rather disappointing for him to see me interested in things like computers and electronics and radios and those sorts of things when, he had a business that was going quite well. And I think he was really hoping in his heart of hearts that would become my passion too, and that I would follow in his footsteps. I was very proud of him, and I didn't expect that there was any way in life that I was going to be as successful as he was. But he really drilled in the notion of hard work, perseverance, And he was a very generous man. He was a very righteous man. And what I mean by that is that I would say he really had the Isaiah view of what it means to be righteous. And that is to look out for people that are brokenhearted, to look out for people that are down on their luck, giving people chances when you shouldn't trust them to begin with. And he was the sort of guy that would pick up hitchhikers, random hitchhikers, and invite them into our home, give them meals, have family worship with them. And one character that was really interesting, his name is David Lawrence. He came to Australia from New York. He was a New York Jew. He had $20 in his pocket, was basically sleeping on the beach, and my dad picked him up, brought him into our home, gave him a job at the banana plantation, treated him like a son. And ultimately, David Lawrence went to Avondale College, ended up becoming a pastor, and won hundreds of people to Christ because of his testimony. So, my father put himself out there. He took risks. He took risks with people. And, sometimes that worked out, but a lot of times it didn't. A lot of times he got kicked in the teeth and taken advantage of. And it's interesting as a child to see that happening and to see his candor and grace when those things happened, rather than becoming bitter and disappointed. It didn't faze him. He still kept moving forwards. He was also a risk taker with his business. He was an innovator in his particular specific model. His idea was, banana growers typically grew their bananas, then they would sell them to the fruit market. And that was pretty much it. His idea was, what about if he disrupted the model of the fruit market, made promises to the supermarket chains that I can deliver you whatever quantity and quality of bananas that you want. You just tell me and I'll get it for you. I'll source it. I'll buy it from other growers from our farm, and we will deliver it to you. And that was really his disruption. He disintermediated the fruit markets, and ultimately he became very successful with that. So great to have an example. They say that about 1% of the population has what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And there's many different studies that kind of support this. But one of those things you could say is it's somewhat inherited, because if you have an example of somebody that's close to you that shows you how it's done, this is certainly, very helpful. Anyway, going back to my childhood, I was absolutely fascinated with electronics, and anything technological or scientific or computers or electronics, I was tearing apart. I was inventing things, invented an automatic car headlight dimmer for our family car at age 10. I was going around door to door fixing up people's radios, their record players, if you remember those spinny plastic things. Anyway, toasters, TVs, whatever they had that needed repair. I'd do it for cash repairs, and it was great to overcome fears of rejection, knocking on doors and learning to hustle and make some money. At the age of 12, I was inventing computer video digitizers and recording devices. And at age 16, I made a computer MIDI interface that allows you to plug in your electronic keyboard into your computer, record music, and then play it back. And I figured at that point I was in high school, I was making about $400 an hour at age 16 with all of the effort and work. I was doing everything. It was a one-man production shop. But at that point I realized maybe school isn't my pathway. I was very much self-taught and continued to teach myself electronics and computer programming and those sorts of things. I was also super interested in anything that was high voltage, high power, or, excitement. You could pretty much say that my childhood was one endless episode of Mythbusters, pretty much continuously. My neighbors were terrified of what was going to happen next. All kinds of radio transmitters and pyrotechnic adventures in the quarry next to my house. A couple of misadventures there too, but since we're being recorded, I won't go into that. And really, you look at this, virtuous cycle of positive reinforcements that can take place. So if you have great academic accomplishments from an early age throughout school, that reinforces your confidence and sets you up for great admission scores to get into the Ivy League universities of your choice. You get all kinds of accolades and adulation from your family, church, and school community. You get strong support and encouragement from educators and mentors and others. There's this expectation of success. And of course, everybody loves to back a winner. You get scholarship offers, there's Ivy League universities. You get your choice of the best job offers when you graduate, and maybe you get offers for graduate school. You are seen as like a very highly eligible bachelor if you're single. And, you have ongoing endless academic, professional, personal, social, and financial success. You have the esteem, popularity, and community acceptance and influence, and you have a comfortable, rewarding life and career. Wouldn't that be great? Well, that wasn't my pathway. Let's just say that. So I dropped out of high school in 11th grade and decided to start my own tech company at that point. And that company was a learning experience, but I continued to be self-taught. Going back to my childhood as well, school wasn't a great experience for me. There was a lot of bullying, a lot of ostracism. And I remember getting my, I figured that the perfect way to not have to go to school was to throw a sickie. We call it chucking a sickie in Australia. That's where you pretend to be sick. And, things such as stomach aches are really hard to prove wrong. So one morning I was moaning and telling my mother I couldn't possibly go to school. I had this terrible stomach ache. She decided to take me to an emergency room, and there was this snapping of rubber gloves. And at that point I realized that my day was about to go badly. The doctor did a very uncomfortable examination and proclaimed that I had acute appendicitis and that I'd have to have my appendix removed within a couple of hours. So at that point, just in sheer terror and horror, I tried to tell the doctor that this thing was all a ruse to try to get out of school, and that really there was nothing wrong with me, and that please don't open me up. But he thought that I was just terrified for the surgery. And so I was drugged up, pinned down, and somewhere there's a pickle jar with my appendix in it.
Gary, what was it like for you in school? As far as, did you find it difficult, or was it just that you had other interests and that kind of took your attention away from your studies?
Yeah. It was really a bit of both. I was the mad scientist of the town, so I did not fit the picture or the mold of a 2,000 population, small country town, very conservative community idea of mad scientist at that point. So there was lots of bullying, ostracism. Just wasn't a good social experience. There was these expectations of my father, so it was a lot of stress trying to live up to that and his view of what I should be. And academically, I did well when I was younger, but finally, my way of dealing with the social issues was to not be at school. Then I wouldn't have to deal with all of these awkward situations. So there comes a point where all of that not being in school and having no clue what assignments you're supposed to be doing or homework that's been assigned or chapter in the textbook that you're up to, that does catch up with you, and it becomes completely demoralizing when you are hopelessly behind. So at that point, I definitely wasn't a dumb kid, but if I buzz forward through here, after some successes with DriveCam being the first really great success, at that point I decided maybe it's time to go back to school and kind of fill in the gaps. And I thought, an MBA would be a great thing to have. But I started out thinking, well, you've got to have an undergraduate degree before you can get an MBA. I had several patents under my belt at this time, some great business successes, some awards and so forth by the age of, early 30s, but didn't even have a high school certificate. How's that supposed to work? So my plan was to go and get an undergraduate degree, since I had a little bit of financial freedom from the first success, maybe do a business degree and then go back and do an MBA.
Mhm.
So I went to the open night at the university. We looked at the program there, but the director said, hey, you've had some really fabulous successes. I mean, very few of our applicants have this kind of success. Why don't you just see if you can go straight for an MBA? And maybe he didn't realize what my academic background was, but I thought, well, that's very audacious, but hey, I've pitched for raising millions of dollars, and successfully done it with nothing more than a crazy idea and a business plan. Why not pitch this crazy thing? So I made an appointment with the dean of the business school. I basically said to him, met with him and said, hey, I really like your program. I like its focus on entrepreneurship. This is at Queensland University of Technology in Australia. And I said, I'd like to be in your program, but I don't have an undergraduate degree. I said, but could you admit me into your program? And, my wife, she is wonderful. She is incredible, a very big component of my success. But she had told me beforehand, hey, we're living in the US. We've had a nice vacation here in Australia. If they give you a full scholarship, then we can do it. That was too big a ask in my opinion. But anyway, I thought, hey, I'm here. So I want you to let me into your MBA program without an undergraduate degree or high school certificate. And I want a full scholarship. And the guy just looked at me and he literally, his words were, he just looked at me, he said to me, he said, who are you? And I said, well, I'm glad you asked. So I had a presentation, a pitch deck basically that I made. Anyway, he was really impressed. He said, we can't just give you a scholarship. What we have to do is you have to meet all of our criteria for scholarships. You have to meet the GMAT score, has to be in the top, 10% or so of GMAT scores. We have to look at your GPAs from your university attendance. And we also have to look at your work experience. You need to have at least 8 years of experience as, CEO or running companies and so forth. So we put all that in. I'd taken some classes, 4 classes at community college. I worked hard. I got 4.0 GPAs in those, but it's only 4 classes. So I submitted that. I sat the GMAT. I only had 2 days to prepare for it because I was leaving the country. And I thought, I'm going to flunk this totally. Anyway, I sat it. I didn't quite get finished, almost finished before the timer ran out with the proctoring of the test. And I just forgot about it. I thought, this is toast. There's no way this is going to work out. So I kind of got back on with life again back in the US. Then New Year's Day, 2003, I get this phone call saying, are you Gary Rayner? And I said, yeah. And they said, we're calling to let you know that you scored in the top 5% of the GMAT and your application for a full scholarship has been awarded. You have a 100% full ride scholarship.
Wow.
So, I guess a lesson in this, is that good things come to those that, I guess, try hard, because my goodness, did I try hard to get hit on this GMAT, but there's only so much preparation you can do. But it's ultimately what led up to being accepted wasn't just being audacious with nothing to back it up. It was all of the diligence and the sacrifice and perseverance that went into building these companies, to showing a real moxie. What they realized I'd bring to the program is a level of perseverance and different perspective from the hard, scrappy entrepreneur that's done it the hard way, rather than the Princeton, Ivy League, silver spoon in the mouth graduates, which have had everything handed to them. And ultimately, I worked hard for the university in as much that I graduated in the top 1%, was on the dean's list, won 2 business plan competitions internationally, international placement for them. So rather than saying that there's such a thing as white privilege or rich privilege or whatever other privilege, I never saw that. I really didn't. What I did see is perseverance privilege. And the great thing about perseverance privilege is it works for all races equally well, maybe even more so. There's, the biblical principles are that if you don't work, you won't eat. That whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. And these were the sorts of principles that, that my father was imbuing in me. And ultimately that you should work not just for human masters, but you should work as if you're working to the glory of God. And I think if you genuinely take that on in what you do, for example, I've never thought about becoming wealthy. I've never thought about anything more than just trying to support my family or pay the rent. Was a major challenge at many times during my career. It really is. I truly believe that if you concentrate on being the very best in the world at what you can do and be, that success will come. And if you give enough people what they want and need, they're only too happy to pay you, to engage you, to work with the best, and success comes. And when I say success, I mean that in all its levels. Financial success in being able to achieve the vision of what you're trying to do. And I think if you apply those principles personally as well, you can have a successful family and a successful marriage, and be a successful Christian, have a successful relationship with God. There's no magic formula here. There's an authenticity to just do it. Just do what needs to be done. Do what's hard and necessary rather than what's fun and easy. And keep persevering at that when there's hard knocks, when I don't know if my camera's still on. I'm going to turn this off again, stop presenting. When there's hard knocks, there's so many times when I had near-death experiences with my businesses where any reasonable person would have said, give up. In fact, they did. Give up. It's over. You can't possibly get through this. It's the end of the road. Forget about it. You tried. But I'm not talking about throwing yourself to the wind. I'm not talking about flying to Hawaii in a Cessna with, 50 gallons of gas when you need 300 gallons to get there and hoping for the best. I'm talking about when things are bleak, if there is something you can do it. There is something about picking yourself back up, dusting yourself off in the face of deep adversity that develops a grit and character in you that will help you get through what you've got to get through. Let's see if there's any other slides here we want to touch on. All right, so, a little photo there. It's a little photo shot ended up getting MBA, short story, and then I went on to another master's degree, a Master of Engineering Science, and graduated with a 7 out of 7 GPA on that. So there's a picture of me on the left there, which is at 21 years old when I was building a computer graphics card company that ended up being quite successful, but unfortunately, business circumstances that were external resulted in Commodore Computers, which was the platform we plugged into, going bankrupt. And when they went bankrupt, the viability of that business ended. But ultimately, it's amazing the places that life can take you if your commitments are to do great things. I'll get back to this slide a little bit later. We can talk about what's it take to be a successful entrepreneur. So I'll turn this off for now.
Barry, would you like to go ahead with any of the polls here?
Yeah, actually, let's look at the first poll. So
Okay.
how strongly were you convinced on your life calling?
All right, so we have the first poll up there, and just feel free to answer. We have still waiting for inspiration, changed my mind many times, I'm doing what seems right, but I'm not sure, and totally convinced.
Wow, that's awesome to see so many people that were totally convinced. And look, if you're still waiting for inspiration, I think it's perfectly fine. Ultimately, you don't have to worry about what you're going to be when you grow up. What you have to worry about is how you're going to be. And that ultimately means, what principles do you live by? How do you work? What is your tenacity? What is your character? What is your grit? What do you stand for? If you know what you stand for, if you decide what you stand for, then that is your inspiration. You don't have to be waiting for what's the perfect career. You just have to say, I stand for whatever that happens to be. I stand for being a voice as an educator to teach other people to do mathematics, if that's your calling, or if you have a talent that you want to share with other people, if you just want to be a fantastic parent, and realize that maybe it's okay to generation skip career success, because you can set your kids up for tremendous career success. There's so many different ways you can define success. I definitely would not say it's your bank account or how many employees that you have. That is a measure of your success.
Jerry, we have some interesting comments here in the chat that are kind of just speaking to that. We have a comment here from one person that says, really, the Bible is so encouraging. If we were to follow it, whatever your hand finds to do it wholeheartedly. I think is kind of the essence of what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another one here, Proverbs 24:16, for a righteous man shall fall many times and rise again. And one last comment here, not how are you going to be when you, or not what you're going to be when you grow up, but how are you going to be when you grow up? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's key. Because these principles that you live your life by, that's what defines your success or failure. Ultimately, if you're trying to be expedient and you're looking for the shortcut, and if you're focused on the money, and if you're looking for, adulation and recognition, or if you're willing to cheat your way to the top, or through treachery or skullduggery, get it, then pretty much you get what you deserve that comes along with that. As a Christian, I really see our example of how we live our life is imperative to live your values. People will believe, they'll believe some of what you say, but they'll believe everything you do. And you've probably heard that saying, your actions speak so loudly I can't hear what you're saying. Hopefully they're good actions.
Yes. Very good.
Did we want to look at any more polls here, or
absolutely? We want to go with number 2 here.
Okay, so how significantly do you think that your relationship with God contributed to your business success?
All right, so in the right-hand section of your screen, you should have the polls option there to answer the poll question here, and I'd encourage each of you to weigh in on that. We have quite a few people answering to the option there. I would not have experienced success without God. And isn't that for sure the truth? Absolutely.
I think so. And again, it comes back to your definition of success. I see that there's some answers here. I'm still waiting for success. And there's many reasons why that could be. It could be that, it's not your time yet. You're still learning things. You're in the setup phase where you're putting things in place that are going to tee up the possibility of success. Maybe you've had difficulty getting access to resources, to give you those options. With that, you have to make your own, I guess you have to teach yourself. You have to do what you possibly can to be scrappy and work with what you got. Or perhaps it's a matter of really stepping back and evaluating what is success. Maybe I've been successful and I don't know it. And if you look at what, if you've got a great family, if you've got a spouse that loves you, if you have influence, and if you've made contributions, that is success. If you're doing what you want, but you're still struggling financially, that's okay. As long as you keep working hard at it.
Absolutely.
Then on the subject of success, perhaps I can jump back in, and would you like me to hit some of those points as far as what I think contributes to success?
That would be great.
So, really this is the series is called how God built this. I really have too many ventures unless we're going to drill down in on one, exactly how he built it. So we'll look at bigger principles in terms of itself. And I think if you look at, what does it take to be a successful tech entrepreneur? And I know we've got a variety of entrepreneurs here, not all tech. There's people in medicine, there's people that are missionaries, there's people that are doing small businesses. But ultimately, first, I think you have to have a passion and a pursuit of excellence. Unless you're going to be excellent, you're not going to be remarkable. If you're not remarkable, you're not going to stand out above others. You're going to be average. Is average successful? Maybe, but I think really standing out is what it takes to be successful in my mind. you have to have tolerance of ambiguity so many times you have no idea what's going to happen next. You've got this notion, an idea of a vision. You're trying to make up the parts in between, invent the parts in between that you need to make this work. But you have to understand that things most often don't work out exactly how you think they will, and you've got to be okay with that. You have to know your market really well. You have to know who wants what it is that you're going to give them, and you have to be very clear both on the customer, their needs, how to get to them, and what it is your product or service offering, which is going to be awesome. You have to have a lot of self-belief and optimism. And this isn't necessarily based on prior evidence. It is based on your trust in your commitment and integrity to yourself and what you're trying to do. So it's not based in nothing, but it's not necessarily saying I've done this before, I can do it again. Sometimes it's I haven't done it. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find a way to do this. And I'm going to find other people that'll help me to figure out how to do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have adaptability and flexibility. When things don't go as you want, or you don't get what you want because you've got a lot less resources to work with, then you've got to figure out, well, let's work with what we got. You've got to be very versatile, which means you need to be good at a lot of things. You don't have to be great at a lot of things, but when it's just you and a few people, you have to figure out how to do whatever needs to be done. And again, resourcefulness is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be very creative. You've got to be open to possibilities and solutions that you'd never even guessed. You've got to come up with great creative solutions as well. You've got to take risks. Now, I'm not suggesting that you live in a cardboard box, with your wife and kids and go homeless. But sometimes, I had to go out into $120,000 of credit card debt and basically mortgage my house when I started DriveCam. Now, if it hadn't worked out, it came very closely to not working out, I would have been bankrupt. I've never actually been bankrupt. I've been broke. And that's one thing to remember too. For those that are waiting for success, just remember, broke is temporary, but poor is forever. So if you have a poor mindset, the bad news is you're not getting out of poverty. Because ultimately, that's where you feel comfortable and you don't feel like you deserve anything more. So that's a poor mindset. A broke mindset is, hey, I don't have any money right now, but boy, do I have big dreams and visions, and we're going to figure this thing out. You've got to have a big picture. You've got to see the whole part, even when it's murky. You've got to keep on trying to bring those parts into focus to make the vision work. And you've got to be unafraid to break rules. Pretty much my entire life is about breaking rules. Not so much to be a rebel, but because the rules were constraints that got in the way. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about breaking, being a criminal or being a cheat, but there are these, each decade kind of has, or even, world moves on quickly now, but there's a meme, there's this construct, there's this notion of how things should be. And a disruptor doesn't play by those rules. You look further ahead of that and you say, this is what it could be. And this is how we're going to get there. And it's all about overcoming barriers that are put there or that get in your way to doing what you want.
Mm-hmm. But you're not, just to clarify, you're saying not breaking laws, but breaking sort of cultural mindsets, perhaps, of what we think is the way that we do things or the way that things should be done.
And industry structures and expectations and all of those sorts of things. Not that, it's the opposite to being immoral or unethical, but it's, I guess, the very definition of being unconventional, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be motivated. Well, you have to be decisive, tenacious, you have to have perseverance, and you've got to be action oriented, which means you just keep moving forwards even when you get stuck. You don't sit there and go, gee, that's terrible. I have no idea what to do now. I'll just crawl up in a ball and hope that revelation comes from God. That's not how God works. God says, I gave you a brain. I gave you this world to work within. I gave Adam the command, essentially, have dominion over this world. Go ahead and be fruitful and multiply. I'm not going to do it for you. Get up and get to work. You got to be motivated by a mission and a vision. And when I say mission, maybe that's in a spiritual context, but not necessarily. Maybe your mission is to get people to experience health and life and to overcome their health problems. If you're into running a fitness organization or something, or maybe it is to help people get education. But it just means you need to have a certain degree of altruism and vision that this is how we're going to make the world a better place, is what I mean by mission. And I think you also need to have a spiritual mission in what you're doing too. You need to realize that as you conduct business, people are watching, and this is an opportunity with your employees to introduce them to spiritual principles and concepts and help them to understand, to a certain degree, the nature of God. Graciousness and generosity and, looking out for people and living a righteous life. None of us do that 100% of the time, but that's our challenge, is to put out the carnal nature to death daily, and to ask for forgiveness for your sins when you slip up. You have to be a lifelong learner. Never stop learning. Always learn. And whether it's formal learning where you're looking to get a degree, I think that's been somewhat helpful to me, but I certainly wouldn't say that's been the major part of my success. It's much more informal learning where there's technology or business practices or business skills, which I continually learn about either through reading books. I read probably about 30 books a year, or continued listening to audiobooks when you're traveling in the car or on the bus or something like that. And you want to keep your health and balance in life, because if you screw up your health, you don't have the energy, you don't have the ability to be able to put yourself into your mission and your vision. And ultimately, you want to be guided by character, by Christian principles and values. And those Christian principles, they're the apparent ones in the Bible, but you have to unpack and decode a little further and realize that it also means, when you look at Nehemiah and how scrappy and resourceful and audacious and outrageous he was to go say, let's rebuild Jerusalem. What do we need? We need, all of these cypress trees from the king's forest. We need, the king's soldiers for safe passage. We need to carry our AK-47 or our AR-15 in our hands while we rebuild the wall. It's basically, there's a lot of life lessons if you dig down a little deeper into business. And, I know that there's a lot of people that think, well, I'm not a business guy, I'm a missionary, I'm working for God. But if you're going to be a successful missionary, it's all the same principles, all the same skills really are needed for that as to be a successful entrepreneur. You got investors that you're held accountable to and that you're beholden to, whether they are your benefactors or those which are funding you, or your constituents which are giving offerings. You've got KPIs which they expect to see, key performance indicators. They're looking at ROI. They have their own wishes which they wish you to abide by. You've got the environment that you're working in, basically the culture, the politics, the laws and everything. You've got your team that you've got to be a great leader and team leader and inspire them and get the best out of them and hold them accountable. So there's, obviously the purpose and how you manage them and how you develop them. And then there's your clients, which are not always those that pay you. If you're a missionary, they're those which they have certain needs, they have expectations, and they have desires as well. So, ultimately, it's okay if you don't know your calling right now. For many of you that do, praise God. I think that is fantastic. I think it's awesome. Keep it up. But dig deep, look at what gifts and talents you can do.
Okay, I think we may have a little technical difficulty here. If you can just type in the chat if you can hear me. I'm going to reach out to Gary and just see if we can get him back online. Okay, let me just do that here. While I'm reaching out to Gary, I would just share another poll with you here. And so we're going to just ask who has been the figure in your life who inspired you the most to strive and succeed? So if you would just want to reflect on that question and answer as I just try to reconnect with Gary here. And let's see if we can get him back online for our question and answer time here. So the question again, what figure inspired you most to strive and succeed? All right, I'm just reaching out to Gary here. And let's just do one more poll question here. What has been your biggest regrets in life? And I'll just share that now.
So what happened there? I'm trying to reconnect.
Okay, yeah, we're just. Good participation in the polls here. Just feel free to weigh in the few minutes we have left here, and we're going to go to Q&A here shortly. All right, one last question here. If you could do your life over again, would you pick the same career path as you did? Yes, no, or not sure, but I'm okay with it. All right, a lot of positive answers there. All right, Gary, can you still hear me?
I can, and I'm connected by my phone right now. I'm going to try to log back in again on ASI Story Hour.
All right, I'm just going to ask my audience if you can hear Gary in his responses here. We could proceed with the question and answer while he's logging in. If you're able to hear him, let's just go ahead with the questions here. So let's, and again, I'd encourage each of you to go ahead and feel free to put your questions in the chat. I'm just going to start with the first question that we had here. And we can maybe give this a try, Gary. Gary, earlier in the presentation, I think you mentioned a movie of some sort, and Joe is asking the question, what movie did you say you got your inspiration from?
Well, I wouldn't say it was so much inspiration. I would say it's more the story of my life in a very humorous kind of way, and that is the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Okay, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Yeah, I see the question was answered there. So that's something that Gary's saying reflects his life. The next question was, I see you currently studying AI/ML, so artificial intelligence there, and I'm curious if you see any potential ways for artificial intelligence to enhance ministry.
Well, of course, I think any way that you can know the needs of your constituents better, that enables you, I think, to potentially be more in tune. So yes, I think it can be helpful. It can either help you to understand your audience better, or maybe it could help to make sure that you understand when audience members, when your church members are maybe falling away, and then being able to intervene, rather than just having them fall through the cracks and being blind to it.
Great. Okay. Yes. So could I just ask, what is your and maybe this is a top secret venture here that you can't answer, but what place or what interest do you have? Where do you see artificial intelligence going perhaps with your next venture? And maybe this is top secret, maybe you can't say. But.
Yeah, sure. Look, I have some ideas around silicon embodiments of massive performance enhancement for essentially machine learning and for artificial intelligence. So I've got some things I'm working on with that, but I'm also working on a non-profit that I've founded and I'm putting a lot of effort into right now called Be the Hero.
Okay. Excellent. Well, and for those who may be just joining us here, just welcoming you to ASI Hour. We're just wrapping up our presentation. We've had a little technical difficulty here, but we're using that perseverance that Gary spoke about earlier. And we're going to persevere here, and I appreciate each of you persevering with us here as we just wrap up our question and answer period here. Again, feel free to type your questions in to the polls here. We have our next question from Gilbert, and he's asking, how do you develop confidence in billing your clients, balancing the need to not be exorbitant and put off the client and getting your worth? So how do you balance those things?
I think you need to know your value, and you need to know your market, the competitive landscape of what others are charging. So if you know that maybe your reputation is not there, but you have a high degree of confidence in the quality of your work, I think it's okay to at least be at market and explain to your customer if they comment on the price, how it is that you are providing extra value or extra quality that they may not expect elsewhere. And realizing, imposter syndrome can be very real, which is when you're starting out and you feel like you don't deserve the respect or the admiration or the confidence of those around you. But you're putting in maybe more diligence in your work than a comfortable, laid-back, seasoned person. So it's quite possible that the quality of your work is higher because you're so diligent about it, and just realize that this may be imposter syndrome. And if it is, don't tell anyone else about it. Just recognize, hey, I'm having a slight fever of imposter syndrome right now, and I realize what I need to do is just take stock and say, no, I'm doing my best. I'm not somebody that is doing a poor job here. I'm worth my keep.
Okay. All right. We have a question here from Christian, and I'll try to read it here. How can, as an Australian, you start an entrepreneur business in the US? This is in relation to legal status in doing business as an Australian in the US. Very much, if any light you can share on this and how difficult it was or has been.
Okay. Unfortunately, I may be coming back here again. Let's see. I am joining with my phone used as a hotspot. So hopefully this will work.
Your phone's back in?
All right.
Can you hear me on the microphone?
I can. Yes,
okay,
perfect.
wonderful. So the question again was, how as an Australian is it possible to come to the US and launch ventures? Well, I came on a tourist visa when I first started out, so I didn't have legal status. Again, sometimes, I guess you would say possibly that's slightly breaking the law, but I didn't know how long I was going to be here. I mean, you're kind of exploring these things. I certainly didn't have a venture or a legal structure or financial resources to set up an S corporation and do all kinds of applying for visas and all the rest. Sometimes this is part of being a dreamer, right? You got to work with what you got. If you just don't have the resources, you try to make it work. If they ask you to leave, then you got to leave, I guess. But you do what it takes to try to succeed. I had no money in my pocket, so it was just a matter of trying to make it work.
Mhm. Okay. What book would you recommend to a budding entrepreneur? This is Ellsworth
Oh, wow.
asking this question.
Funny you asked that question. All right, so can you
All
see it
right.
on the screen there?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
It's perfect.
All right, and probably one of the best books, I think, overall is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Mindset is a great one. I'm also a big fan of Brian Tracy. I don't have one of his books up here, but he's got some great books too on essentially time management. You got the components
Mhm.
of vision, and then you've got your executive time management. You have to make use of the hours that you have in your life as well. So you just have to don't try to invent this stuff from the ground up. If you can learn from the best, why wouldn't you? Why do why would you want to reinvent the wheel all over again when you can stand on other people's shoulders?
All right. Excellent. We're just winding down in our time here. Perhaps one last question, or one of the last few questions. Gary, do you offer mentorship or coaching to a young missionary entrepreneur?
So,
This is from William.
I'm going to say I would. Right now, I am completely, totally overwhelmed with all kinds of things that I haven't asked for, that have, legal challenges and other things that are happening in my life right now that are emergencies. They're things that you don't get to choose, but you have to deal with them and deal with them. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. So I don't feel like I hardly even have enough time for my family and keeping track of health right now with servicing these emergencies that I'm going through. So I think the answer would be yes, I would be open to that into the future, but in 2020, probably not. And I'm sorry about that.
All right. William, what I'll just say to that as well is ASI may be able to just help you in that. We do have opportunities for mentorship if you're willing to just reach out to us. And I'll be happy to put my email address in here, and perhaps we can connect you with resources that can be helpful to you in that way. So, Gary, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening. I would also like to just encourage you, if you want to share this presentation with anyone else, this will be available on the ASI website after the next day or two. We'll be posting that there. And we would like to encourage each one of you to continue to invite people to share the opportunity that exists with the training and the equipping that the ASI Hour is intended to offer each week. And so invite someone else to join us. Next week, we have an exciting opportunity. James Hartley will be hosting our health track. And so I'd like to invite you to join us for that. And Gary, I wonder if you would be willing to just close with prayer here as we wrap up our hour together.
Heavenly Father, we're just thankful for this gift of life and the amazing, endless opportunities you've given of how we can put our efforts in life towards serving others and making this world a better place, but leading other people to a better place too, which is a relationship with you and your kingdom. So continue to inspire us, to keep us in good health, and to give us courage to do what we need to do. Thank you for your ultimate gift of sacrifice and courage for us, which is giving us the pathway to eternal life. And we love you for that. Amen. Also, I'd like to thank everybody that has joined from around the world. I know it's very late in some of these time zones. It's great to see the participation and the comments, and I'm sure there's a lot of extremely bright, gifted, dedicated people that have made time to attend this, and we help each other. Iron sharpens iron. So hopefully I'll be hearing your story one of these days soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you again, Gary, for sharing, and thank you each one for your the opportunity that you took to join us here this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time for ASI Hour. Good night to each one.